But I'm going to look anyway at the new collection.
Good evening. Welcome to our Stoughton School Committee meeting. Today is September 9, 2014. And as always, we start with a Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Maureen, didn't you have a pad and paper the last time? Are you back like into the modern era?
It's good to see you, Dr. Rizzi. For those of you, we have had a meeting with Mr. Ford and Ms. Shea last week. We thought it would be maybe a good idea to postpone the meeting in view of Dr. Rizzi's accident, and she wanted to hold this meeting. So today we have extra short agenda. We may be going home in half an hour, maybe.
Wishful thinking.
I wouldn't be so sure.
The first item on the agenda is public comments. I see people have signed up. We have Mrs. Bronson from 4 Capon Street, and she is going to talk about longitudinal data system.
I made up this chart to make it more easy for all of you to understand the longitudinal data system. Okay, and I've printed out a copy for each of you and left it at your space. But I wanted to also put this into a greater context. Zbigniew Brzezinski, a member of the Council of Foreign Relations, handpicked Jimmy Carter to be president. Carter, Brzezinski, and David Rockefeller founded the Trilateral Commission, a front group for the Council on Foreign Relations. Brzezinski was the national security advisor to President Carter, and President Carter established 2 cabinet positions, the Department of Energy and the Department of Education. The Department of Energy established a Human Genome Project, an international scientific research project to determine the sequence of DNA, the mapping of all the genes of the human genome from a physical and functional standpoint. In 1970, Brzezinski wrote Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era, in which he stated, the technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date, complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen. The attainment of this most personal information will come through the National Center for Educational Statistics, such as, what are the mental and psychological problems of the student and the student's family. Now, on the chart, the federal government has no control over public education, under 20 UCC 1232A. However, Congress permitted the Department of Education to make a financial contract with the different states. The states agreed for the money that they would get from the federal government to establish a longitudinal data system. The longitudinal data system is governed by FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which has been gutted by the Department of Education. And this new framework is going to be utilized by the National Center for Education Statistics. They will, under the White House, the Office of Budget Management, they're located in the Eisenhower Executive Building on the same compound as the White House. They control the National Center for Educational Statistics.
Denise?
And they are told, NCES is told by the Office of Budget Management to give the information to the United Nations. Okay, the NCES
Ms.
also.
Bronson, the 3 minutes are up.
Thank you.
You're welcome to come back next meeting.
I'll be back until
Okay.
this gets done.
Thank
Whether
you.
Want to
Yeah,
realize
we
it.
really appreciate your persistence.
Thank you for coming.
Next, we have Miss Barbara Anzovino, and her topic is 10 and 11. May I ask you what the 10 and 11 are?
The request I had last week, I wanted to follow up on it.
Oh,
and
okay.
Transfers,
Okay,
okay?
please.
Hi,
3
Barb.
minutes.
Yes,
We
gonna
got
be
a
fast, I'm gonna
timekeeper
talk
here.
fast. Okay, ready? Barbara Ansvino, 25 Ross Avenue. Last week on the 26th, I had a request for information. I received that information today. However, I did not get some certain items, and I want to make sure that I do get them. I did not get April 1st, April 29th, May 5th, and there's a spreadsheet.
Could you say them
Yes.
slowly?
In my
1st,
3
April
minutes.
29th.
April 1st, April 29th, May 5th. I did not receive those, and there's a spreadsheet that goes with 519 that I did not receive either. I would like to get those items.
You have a spreadsheet of...
It says there's a spreadsheet. If you read your minutes on 519, it says there's a spreadsheet. There was no spreadsheet attached, and by requesting the minutes, you're supposed to get all the exhibits. So I would like that spreadsheet. Okay. So the second thing I would like to ask is, when I was here on June 2nd, and at that time, we talked about positions and filling positions, and then at town meeting, I asked again about if you guys were going to fill the positions, and we are now in September, and I would like an update on where we are in the filling of the new positions that were in the budget. Have they been filled?
You will get an answer on item 11.
Okay, so when
Please
we get there,
proceed.
you're going to let me know?
Yeah, you'll find
Okay.
out.
All right. So I have a letter here that if I do not get my answers, when we get to that particular place, I will pass in, and then you guys can just send me the answers whenever you get to it. Okay?
Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Just to give you guys a little background, Ms. Anzovino has made an unprecedented request. She requested all the executive minutes from the beginning of 2014 until the end of June of 2014. So there were like 20 different executive session minutes. And this is the Committee of Transparency, so we have given it to the attorney. He redacted certain parts, and it was a large undertaking. And he forwarded them to Ms. Anzovino, so I'm glad Ms. Anzovino is really appreciative of this committee's stance, because I asked something from the town manager. It's something simple. He's fighting me even the simple item, but we'll get to that in due time. Next, no, you cannot. Next, we have Mr. Steve Mitchell.
Steve Mitchell, 18 Commercial Street, Stoughton. I live across the street from the West School. I lived at 1303 Central Street until 1988, which is right across, and now I live the house behind. I'm not going to be able to get this all in 3 minutes, but I'll try my best. I talked to the superintendent about the problems on Commercial Street about 5 years ago. That isn't as bad as it used to be. They were parking on both sides. I would like eventually to do something about that. But the bigger problem is that, obviously, with Hanson School, the kid got hit 2 years ago. In the West School, they're not just parking on Commercial Street anymore. They're parking on Central Street, which is a busy road, and it's not a safe thing. When I was a kid, we all walked to school. I went to the West School when I was in the 60s. So something has to be done. Part of it was expressed to me that it was the prices on buses went up, so the parents started dropping them off. Of course, everybody has cars now, so that happens. But I talked to the chairman of the planning board, and he talked about maybe bringing another driveway in from Chemung Street. I don't know how practical that is to try to get some of the parents to pick up their kids. I don't know if that would work or not, but if something isn't done, the parents shouldn't be parking on Central Street, but maybe they have nowhere else to go. But I'm afraid somebody's going to get seriously hurt or killed, and I know this forum isn't exactly the right place because it needs to be with the selectmen and also probably the police chief. So at least you have a forum here, and maybe we can address this further on. But the middle school's somewhat of a problem. The kids are older, so it's not as bad. High school a little bit, and the other schools are kind of off the beaten path. But the West School and the Hanson School are serious. Now, if you would talk to the crossing guard there, the younger one that comes in, Mrs. Peters, she will tell you that she used to get all the kids across the street right there. Now that the cars are up and down Central Street, the kids don't always cross right there with the crossing guard, so it becomes a bigger safety issue there. And like I said, Commercial Street, the safety officer of the police department came down, and they did put some no parking signs at the end of Commercial, which helped, and in front of 1303 Central Street where my mother used to live. But it's still a serious problem, and it needs to be addressed. I don't know what the solution might be, but I don't know if we can go back to busing them some more kids or find somewhere else for the parents to park or what. But it's not a good thing. Especially Commercial Street becomes a problem when it's snowing out, or when the fire trucks try to get down to the Civic Court, and sometimes. The courthouse people that are going over there for their business park on the other side of Commercial Street, which makes the problem.
3 minutes are up.
What's that?
3 minutes are up.
Okay, boss.
Thank you so much for coming. And finally, we have Miss Pat McNeil on the people who signed up for the public comments.
Can I just add something to what Mr. Mitchell said?
Yeah.
Because I live pretty much across the street from the high school. The high school, number one, Adams Street not having a stop sign, and the parking, it's a disaster. When school's getting out at 2 o'clock, both sides of Adams Street are full. And in the morning, there's 2 lanes of traffic on Pearl Street. And kids are being dropped off and coming across Pearl Street, and there's going to be another accident soon. It's very scary in the morning. But I will hurry up and get to the rest of my things.
You're the timekeeper here.
I was happy last week or 2 weeks ago to hear that the special ed programs were starting to be evaluated. And I just was wondering, has the school committee received any of the reports or any of the results? And had they been shared with parents or the CPAC? Seeing that Pathways was not highly regarded, and someone from the outside of the district recommended that it be dismantled or done away with. I think it's critical that the public be made aware of what is being evaluated, how it's being evaluated, and what the results are, so that we do know what's going on, because some of our programs are really great. We want to be able to repeat that in different schools, but we also want to know what's not working. We can't fix it if we don't know. And the parents need to be part of this whole process. And that brings me to the survey that was mentioned last week. I hope the committee has received their answers to the questions about how it was set up, the parameters of the survey, because surveys, there was nothing as far as how many people responded, how many were given out. I know it was about the IEP process, and we only had April, May, and June. There may have been a few in July and August, but it's been tradition that they don't have IEP meetings during that time, but I could be mistaken. The last thing that I'm going to talk about is I'm really not going to address the superintendent's personal attack on me during that meeting. I will do that in a more formal way, other than to say that many parents are afraid to come in and say their concerns, both to the teachers, and I try and kind of give them confidence to understand what their rights are and that they're able to come forward, and that everybody has their children's best interest in heart. But I want you to understand it's very difficult to come and sit at this table and speak, and a lot of people are afraid to talk about what's going on and if they're uncomfortable or not understanding something. So I just want to make that, I think it was quite clear they don't want to happen to them what happened to me, and I'm that's all I'm going to say on the matter at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are moving on to the next item, which is traffic safety around schools.
What about the bid?
Oh, the bid. I'm so sorry, Joel. Please come to the table. Oh, no, we need you. We need you on the next item, too.
How you doing, Joe?
Very well, thank you. This is a bid to reglaze the cafeteria of the South Elementary School. We originally bid this in July. We did not receive any bids. This is a second bid. We went out and only received one bid. We then went out and talked to some companies informally to see if this was in line with their thinking on the pricing. The two companies that we contacted informally felt this was in line price-wise, so we are going to recommend to accept the one bid that we received.
So maybe we can do our superintendent's recommendation and then the motion and then have a discussion. What would the superintendent recommend?
That we accept the single bid for the reglazing of the South School cafeteria.
Is there a,
Move the recommendation.
is there a second?
I second.
Okay, discussion.
Joel, why do you think we only got one bid? I don't know if you can answer that or not.
It's a little different project than most window companies or most large companies will come in and take the entire frame out, put a new frame in, et cetera, have this built. What we're doing is leaving the existing frame and just reglazing and replacing the insulated panels. So I think it's kind of a in-between project. It's too small for many of the big window companies and too big for a lot of the little guys that are just doing glazing and window replacement. So it's kind of a in-between project.
Now, can you tell me what reglazing is?
Basically replacing the glass.
Replacing it. Do you know how old the windows are?
The windows have been replaced over time. Some of them are plexiglass. Some of them are still glass, but how old each individual piece is, if you look, and it may have not have come in your packet, but this, and this is not a big drawing. That
Pass it down to him, please.
gives you an idea of how many pieces of between glass, glazing, and panels there are in that storefront.
Quite a
So
project.
these whole wall is glass?
No, there are some panels in there. There are some insulated panels.
Wow.
That's it.
Thank you.
So Joe is thinking, let me ask you a question. Do you think $27,000 is a reasonable price for that kind of a work?
Yeah, I think it's appropriate. As I say, we checked with a couple of other companies unofficially, just to get an idea, with the understanding that they didn't have any, they weren't going to bid on the project, and they estimated between $25,000 and $30,000.
Now, on this reglazing, are those windows leaking, et cetera, or?
Some of them are leaking. A lot of them are, as I mentioned, plexiglass, originally plexiglass. So they allow weather in. They are not sealed very tightly, and a lot of them have become discolored over the years.
Do we put a special pane of glass in there, or safety glass or something, or?
Yeah, tempered glass. We always use
glass?
tempered glass, yes.
Thank you.
This, just FYI, is part of the deferred maintenance article that was passed in town meeting, annual town meeting of FY13. This is one of the number of projects that we've got under the deferred maintenance article.
Are there any other questions?
Not at all.
In my business, when they talk about glazing, it's like they bond some kind of a plastic to the window. like a transparent plastic.
Glazing
Is this the
kind
same
of,
thing?
No, the glazing is kind of a glazier is originally a person that came in and replaced a window. And so any type of window that doesn't really replace the entire framework is considered glazing within the facilities and construction industry.
So seeing no questions or discussion, I'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
The next item on the agenda is traffic safety around schools. This has been an ongoing discussion. It was heated up due to tragic accident 2 years ago, so the anniversary is coming up. So I put this on the agenda, and I approached a couple of department managers to see if they would be willing to come. I also asked Dr. Rizzi to update the parents on what has been done over the past 2 years and what remains to be done around all Stoughton schools. So this discussion is that we are beginning today is not just for the Hanson School, but the other schools. So would you like to speak on this, Dr. Rizzi?
Well, this is actually a request I got yesterday, so I will be brief because that was yesterday. When that accident happened at the Hanson, Mr. Feaster and I started a traffic task force, and the traffic task force is now managed, I think, extremely well by our town engineer, and there are many things that the traffic task force does, and it also includes looking at sidewalks, looking at safe routes to schools, and there are many things involved in looking at the intersections, the streets of Stoughton. Some of the intersections are run by the state. There are some state routes. There are some local roads. One of the things that you might recall the task force did during town meeting was to get an article passed to hire an on-call intersection consultant. And so that gentleman has been looking at the intersections, and the intersections, of course, have to be prioritized. And once they're prioritized, then we'll look at what redesigns might make sense for some of them and partner with the state on getting some of those redesigns paid for and taken care of. There are intersections that kind of have a knock-on effect, so you can't really look at one intersection on Central Street without looking at a whole series of them. So Tosca Drive and the West Street intersection and the Island Street intersection, and even so far as the Pearl Street intersection, they're all interlocking, and so it's a major study of the entire road, and then the roads that impact those roads. So the task force meets regularly at least every 4 weeks, and sometimes more. And there are multiple projects underway to look at the entire town of Stoughton and how to make it more friendly for pedestrians of all ages, dare I say bicycles, and even safer for those folks who travel all those roads in cars. Stoughton is a major crossroads of the world in many ways. So while it's a town where we live, it's also a place that thousands and thousands of people pass through from one place to another on any given day. So there are multiple departments involved in the traffic task force. Mr. Harding and I represent the schools, as does Ms. Husseini. The Old Colony Planning Council is a part, so we have county people involved. We have the DPW folks involved. The town engineer is extremely committed to this work, the town planner. So there are many different aspects of the town who are all brought together to look at this issue, which is not simply a matter for the schools, but one which deeply concerns us, but which we've had to partner with both local management, but also state and county people as well, in order to make some progress on making the entire town of Stoughton a more livable and safe place to walk, ride, drive.
I thought you answered that extremely well. I'm glad we didn't give
Sure.
you a week's time, my God.
Hey.
But you answered it very, very fully, and I appreciate that.
So is there any questions for Dr. Rizzi?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Actually, I'd just like to add comments to that, and actually to address Mr. Mitchell's concerns as well, because in conjunction with the Transportation Task Force, we've done site visits and observations with the Old Colony Planning Council in front of the West School.
I
And
forgot
have
to
tell
mention,
you,
I'm sorry,
was
but-
horrified as well to be standing on a property across the street from the West School and have a car basically come up on the lawn and do a U-turn into the group of people. We are trying to do what we can do from a government standpoint and whatever, but there is just very little you can do other than to call people on their behavior. And the behavior of some of the drivers especially when they're dropping off their own children and picking up children, offends me, because this wasn't somebody who was passing through. This was somebody who was there to pick up children. There's also a Safe Routes to School grant that is in process right now at the West School. It's an assessment grant where they are looking at basically they're comparing a dozen or so towns who've submitted the grant applications to see where they can throw $500,000 or so, and we're hoping to be one of those towns that they choose. We think our need is tremendous, particularly in that area, and we chose the West because of the number of pedestrians, or the potential for the number of pedestrians to reach that school. But from a personal standpoint, aside from the Transportation Task Force, I would like to add that I can't stress enough to parents who are dropping off their kids, and I'm fortunate this year in that I don't have to drop off my child, but to see parents in the parking lots at schools on their cell phones, to me, is just a horrible example to our teenagers and to our children. And if you go through the lines of the parents who are dropping off, it's probably better than 50% most mornings of people who aren't paying attention, but their phones are glued to their heads. And the concept, again, that people are dropping off either on Adams Street or on Pearl Street or on Central Street across from the school, and therefore putting their kid in harm's way and not at a crosswalk, it has got to stop, and that has to stop at the parent level. So this is my appeal to people to use your common sense to slow down. Nobody's life, your child's life, and no other child's life is worth the hurry that people appear to be in. That's it.
I just would add one thing related to what Mr. Mitchell said about the cost of buses. And we've been very curious about what does the cost of buses impact whether or not people use them. And actually the cost of buses is, so if you were to use one of the school buses, if you were a person who was not eligible for pay and ride, it basically comes to $2 a day, which is a lot less than it probably costs for someone to use a car to bring their children to school. But we have over the last few years done a number of surveys and asked parents, if the bus was half the price, would you use it? If the bus was no cost, would you use it? And parents have basically said to us that it doesn't matter what the cost is, they prefer using their cars. That's a choice, and every once in a while we ask again to see what the impact would be, and at least as far as we've been able to get a response to that, people do prefer using their cars.
Is there any way that somebody from that committee, and I know Joyce is on it, et cetera, could come here and give us an update every now and again, just to fill us in as to what's going on and what's being talked about, et cetera?
Well, we can definitely do it because we go to all the meetings.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So then I would, if I may, I would suggest that when you have something to talk about, please have it put on the agenda. That would be appreciated.
Yeah.
Now, who started the task force?
Mr. Feaster and
did?
myself.
So
Together,
the
jointly.
members were appointed by the two of you?
We asked people to participate that we thought would have a contribution to make to the work.
And Joyce is there as a representative of the school committee?
I don't know so much as that, as I was already involved in a number of other committees that kind of were rolled together, predating my being on the school committee.
Okay. I don't remember seeing the posting for these task force meetings. Are they posted?
They're public meetings, they're posted.
Yeah, but they're working meetings.
Working meetings, yeah.
of,
So what does that mean? They don't have to post it?
Well, they're posted.
yeah,
I don't think
But-
they are posted.
Under what title would they be posted?
Transportation Task Force, I
Okay.
believe.
How
I-
often do you guys meet?
as I said before, about once a month, sometimes more often.
So there are like a minutes that we could look at?
As my understanding is, it is a working meeting of employees of the town, and there are a few guest volunteers. It is not a committee that is required to have meetings or minutes, nor is there a, it's not a committee that is established by the charter. There are numbers of committees that are working committees of people who are employed by the town.
My mistake then.
So if it's a working meeting, maybe it's a good idea to inform the school committee before the meeting, so anybody who wishes to go and learn what's transpiring have the opportunity to do so. Is it possible?
Is it open to the public?
It's not open to the public in that it is a meeting of people who are employed by the town to do certain work, and it's not an open meeting the way, it's not a town meeting, it's not the finance committee, it's not a committee established by the charter, it's a task force of employees of the town.
I think school committee should be informed of every single meeting. I don't accept the answer that it's not open to the public, and I don't think you said it in that sense. These are the, everybody here is concerned about the safety, traffic safety around the schools, and if something is going on, and then you said there are no minutes for people to look at. There is no video record. I think it's only fair to notify the school committee members or the public too, if they want to go see what's going on, because it has been 2 years, and we don't have much progress to show since the accident.
Well, I would certainly not agree with that statement. The issues related to traffic are very complicated and require a lot of cooperation from a lot of different agencies and folks who work in the town and also in the state and so on. So I would say that there's been a great deal of work done, and there'll be a great deal of more work done. And certainly the town meeting has heard from the engineer in terms of some of the things that are now underway based on the voting of an article to get a consultant and so on. So I think the members of the task force would take issue with your statement that nothing has been done.
Well, I mean, if I could see a report, if I could see minutes, if I could see a work in progress. I mean, I'm a member of the school committee. I'm a member of the town meeting. I'm a member of the resident of town. I mean, if I want to see it, I should have access to it. We all come to the same question, just take our word. We are working on it, and I have no reason to doubt it. But I want to see, what has been done and what needs to be done. That's what I'm looking for. And I'm not asking you to produce all these things. All I asked you today is to notify the school committee before the next meeting and the following meetings. And you are not agreeing to do that. Are you agreeing to do that?
I will speak with the town manager and with the town engineer, and we will determine whether or not it's a staff meeting, which is therefore not open to the public, or if it's a meeting that is open to the public. Since it's not up to me to make that decision, I'll consult with people who know better than myself.
And might I add, too, that when you talk about public having input, the public has input through their comments and their emails and calls to both the town engineer and to public safety, who acts in the safety capacity in terms of roads. And those two individuals in particular, whether it's the police chief or lieutenant who is in charge of safety, whose name escapes me, or thank you, or the town engineer, who bring all citizen concerns and comments to the committee for discussion.
I mean, I don't want to dominate the conversation, but let's see how other people, board members feel. Please.
I just think that, that these are specialists in the areas. This is what they do for a living, and we need to respect the fact that they're doing what is right. I mean, you do have community involvement. You do have state and local involvement. And I guess, for me, I don't see a problem with this.
Any other?
Well, Joyce and Dr. Rizzi did say that they'd come back and give us the information that they're getting at the meeting.
Yep.
You said you had state involvement too?
Old Colony Planning Council, which is a quasi-state agency. And I think you're, and you know, just to update, if you will, you're going to be seeing some current or some recent reconfigurations and tests done with some prohibitive turns in the center that they're going to be rolling out and trying on a temporary basis to see what the impact is. And much of what we're looking to do is to prioritize and to approach the state to get on their list for monies. Yeah. And that process is not a fast process. That is a process that, for the most part, to you know, get money to prioritize an intersection or a stretch of roadway could take 2 to 5 years. So a lot of this won't be immediate. But if we don't start the process, we'll never get on the list.
So these are for the state roads or for all the roads?
It's for all the roads, but the number of dangerous intersections the most dangerous happen to be under state control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you mentioned dangerous intersections. That's not what I'm inquiring about here. I'm talking about traffic safety in front of the high school, traffic safety in front of the Hanson School.
The Hanson and the
West
West
are
are
in front of the West School. Yeah. Middle school is a problem. So I'm trying to figure out what has been done since the accident and what needs to be done. I can't ask it any simpler than that. I don't want a solution. I'm not looking for a solution for the downtown or the.
As Dr. Rizzi mentioned, the #1 priority that came out of the accident was the hiring. First of all, the formation of the task force, and then the hiring of the consultant. The article that went before town meeting, the hiring of the consultant with the intention of looking specifically at the area in front of the West School, which in fact is under state control, and the decision made both by our town engineer and others looking at it. There are other independent engineers on the council as well, that it is a connected system, as Dr. Rizzi had mentioned, and that you can't simply fix a single intersection to point the Tosca Drive or Weston and Central without impacting things further down the line, which is where hopefully the work of the consultant that's been hired will help lead us in a direction that will get us both state money and show to us where we need to look for further town involvement.
Well, you say it's going to take 5 years.
That's for the state money, yes. But if we didn't start, then it would take a lot longer.
Okay. As I mentioned, I reached out to 2 department heads. I didn't know about, I didn't think of the town engineer, so I will invite him to our next meeting. I reached out to Chief Shastany, and I think he will be sending a representative from the police department for the next meeting. I reached out to Mr. Batchelder. He sent a note. He took my question more narrow scoped, just referring to the Hanson School. So he sent a memo. Would you be willing to read it, Katie?
Okay. It has been nearly 2 years since the tragic accident in front of the Hanson School. Since that time, many things have been instituted, discussed, planned, and/or looked at for funding. We have put together a traffic task force, which is headed up by the town engineer, Mark Tisdale, and also includes Police Chief Paul Shastany, Lieutenant Mike Blunt, Tom Fitzgerald, Assistant Superintendent of Operations of Public Works, myself, and several others. The object of this committee is to come up with new ideas and funding solutions to bring ideas forward. Some have been done and some are in other stages. We have added new sidewalks on the north side of Central from Island Street to the parking lot and several storefronts. That has allowed us to blacken out dangerous crosswalks on Central near West and move closer to the driveway entrance on Central Street. We are experienced with crosswalks treatments. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on. In town, we are starting the major intersections and also the ones that are directly involved with crosswalks school students. We will continue this and see what lasts and is most visible. We have also been talking about changing out and adding some new school zones lights throughout the town and also some pedestrian stoplights in several locations. Discussions have been ongoing and regarding reconstruction for several intersections to maybe thin out thin out the wide ones that cross lanes and have no resting spot for pedestrians. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me.
Sorry, Katie, I didn't realize.
Sorry, I
you
didn't
had-
bring my
I'm so
glasses. I
sorry.
didn't.
Okay. Mr. Batchelder gives sort of an update, and I will pass it on to our secretary for the. The way we are leaving this item is that it's going to be on the agenda next week. I'm going to be inviting Mr. Tisdale and some representative from the police department. And by next meeting, the superintendent will find out and report to us if we are going to, if these meetings are can be attended by school committee members or not. Did I understand you correctly? Whether they are staff meetings? If they are staff meetings, we cannot go?
I'm going to talk to the town manager and the town
Okay.
engineer. When there are working staff meetings, they're not necessarily open meetings that the public can attend, but
Okay, so that's a great start. Thank you. Any other discussion on this topic? No? Okay. Next item is policy for pet responsibility on school grounds. Just to give you an idea of this is again a continuing subject. Last meeting there was a presentation made by a parent, and the committee sort of some members of the committee at least thought that would be a good idea to do something about pet responsibility on school grounds. And then superintendent mentioned that there are we have two policies. One is animals in classrooms, and the other one is service animals. So what she has done is, or the school committee secretary has done, is put one of those policies in the packet for the committee to review. So at this meeting we can, talk some more about. So we put this on the agenda. So I'm going to turn the floor over to our vice chair, Ms. Enochian.
I was just wondering if it's at all possible. I went to the schools and saw that most of the schools have signs, and it does say on the playground area, if we could, it says no pets allowed. Two schools do not have these signs, and I was wondering if we could start by putting these signs up, and maybe that would, maybe people would take notice, and they would think twice about walking their dog through the playgrounds and letting their dogs, whatever.
Mhm.
I will talk to Joel about looking at the signs and making sure that they're consistent. So some of them do say no pets are allowed.
Yeah, most of the schools, most of the elementary schools do have them. I believe it was just the South and the Hanson that did not. If we could,
Well, there's no reason that they should be signed or that the rules there should be different from any of the other schools.
okay.
I think the signs may just have been put up at different periods of time, and yeah.
Now the question is, well, two questions come to my mind. That having saying that that's a small portion of this big warning sign, saying that no pets allowed. Do people understand and obey that?
I know
sign?
that they do at the Gibbons. I know I see people with dogs at the school, but they never go in where the playground is.
Okay.
May I ask, though, because wasn't the concern from the Gibbons PE teacher about the droppings that were on the playground?
That was Hanson.
Oh, it was a Hanson,
It was
okay.
Hanson, and that
Okay.
was a problem because they
Okay.
have kindergarten picnics out there and.
Sure. Well, just PE would be a concern for me. If that were-
Exactly.
The other question that comes to my mind is, should we add this or make a new policy for that purpose, if that's the will of the committee?
My question on that would be, how can we create a policy where we don't have the ability to enforce it? I would think that would be, I think that would be a town policy in terms of pets on property, because we don't have the ability to fine people or monitor off hours or even if during hours enforce.
But that's school property. Don't we have to ask the town to enforce it? Of our policy and.
Well, this sign says police take notice, so I would guess that.
That the police would take notice.
Say, okay, we noticed it.
Well, if you'd like me to comment on that, the issue with police enforcement is school property is private property held in a public trust for all intents and purposes. So if we wanted police enforcement or town enforcement on our property, we'd actually have to go to the selectmen and have them authorize the police department to enforce a given policy or given law on our property. It's the most common time that happens has to do with parking enforcement. And you know, this is probably something as simple as putting out the signs and getting consistent signage. And then if that isn't effective, it might be a scenario we could come back, look for policy, then and consult with the police department and the town manager as to what the route would be in moving forward.
May I ask Mr. Ford directly then? The question is, if we had a policy, it would have to have some sort of enforcement arm, because we can't enforce.
We really can't enforce a policy. We can set forth a policy saying it's our policy, we don't allow pets on school property. But once school's out, we really don't have the ability to enforce these things except with students. So that's when we would want to go back, if people were ignoring the signage, to go to the town, to go to the police department and see what's the process. In the past, when I've dealt with these kind of issues, it's always been going to the police chief, having the police chief then direct co-letter with, when I was a high school principal, I did this, and have him bring it forward to the selectmen to vote on enforcement. Which, once they vote to enforce, that then authorizes the police to enforce a law on private property. And then they would be responsible for following through on anybody that chose to ignore whatever type of signage that we put up.
That sounds good. So,
I'm sure Chief Shastany is looking for more things to enforce.
And I'll say, in the past, when we did take things forward, it was always after we had tried to remedy the situation ourselves. So we could say to them, we aren't just looking for you to do our work for us. We've actually tried to address this issue. And we found that given the circumstances surrounding what we're trying to do and the individuals that are involved with it, we could not effectively follow through on implementing a given policy or a given piece. That's when the police chose to get involved.
well, I agree with what Mr. Ford says, and Dr. Izzy said that she's going to talk to Mr. Harding about getting the signs put up, if I'm correct. And,
So that they're all consistent. There
yeah,
are
so
some
they're-
that make it very clear, no pets are allowed. And so if you have the sign up, that's step one.
Mhm.
And then we do have people with authority on school grounds who can point to the sign and say, see, no pets.
Actually, the parents can do that too. They sometimes point at things because the playgrounds they are used during the off school hours or on holidays and Sundays. And so there is nobody from the school department to enforce. And then if you see something funky going on, you call the police.
That sounds like a good
So
start.
is that what we are, is that the consensus? Have they make the signs uniform, but not work on a policy?
Let's try the signs first, then go from there.
Okay,
Agreed.
so that's the consensus then.
And thank you, Katie. Taking the
welcome.
pictures and
All right. Next item is fingerprinting policy. Mr. Ford.
I did include with this packet a draft fingerprint policy, and for those people that don't know, the state recently passed a law that requires schools to fingerprint all of its employees, and we actually at this point have fingerprinted all of our new employees, and our veteran employees will be going through a process of being fingerprinted completely through 2016. And the law requires that we fingerprint our employees as well as anybody else that comes to a school that would have a direct and unsupervised access to children. So if we had, for instance, chaperones on a field trip, they would be required to be fingerprinted. If we have parents simply volunteering in a classroom, they wouldn't necessarily have to be fingerprinted because ideally there's always a teacher, somebody in the room, so there isn't that aspect of direct unmonitored contact. But one of the things I did want to get put in place is a policy regarding this. In this way, there's a clear expectation across all of our schools, in particular for our principals. So when they are informing people of when we're fingerprinting, when we're not fingerprinting, it's right out there on the table. There's also a piece called a suitability determination, and that allows our school district to issue a determination to another school district if we've fingerprinted an employee, so that person doesn't have to go through the process and incur the cost again. We can also accept suitability determinations generated by other school districts, but I wanted to ensure the fact we had criteria over what we were going to accept. So we weren't accepting a suitability determination that's 20 years old, or something from 5 years ago where maybe the person moved out of state for 4 years and is moving back to Massachusetts. So what I prepared for you is a draft policy, and this policy is based on a model policy that the state put out after they released the legislation. And what I did is I added specific things from the Department of Ed regulations that were put in place to address the state's laws. So you have a hybrid policy here, modeled after what the state put out and updated with the information provided by the regulations put out by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And this policy you can take a look at, you can add, subtract, do what you want to do. If we go too far in one direction or another, I'll let you know in terms of coming out of compliance with the state law. And if this looks good, we can count this also as a first reading tonight and give a chance to take a look at it again and bring it back next week, or I should say in 2 weeks, and see if we want to make any revisions.
So we are not going to vote on this tonight. Is there any discussion or questions from the board?
I have a question. I believe the teachers are going to be charged something like $55 to get fingerprinted, and I would assume that either custodians or whatever who do not have a title of teacher will be charged $35
That's true.
per session of fingerprinting.
If you're a licensed teacher, you have to pay the $55. And even if you're a paraprofessional, but you hold a teacher's license, you still have to incur that higher cost, even if you're not in that position. So basically, anybody that's getting fingerprinted to work in a school that holds a teaching license has to pay the full amount. If you don't hold a license, it's the reduced amount.
Is that going to be a burden on not necessarily the teachers, but even the custodians or whatever?
Well, it's an interesting question. And one of the things that came through with this legislation is school departments were kept out of actually addressing that particular piece, because it does say specifically it's the individual's responsibility to pay for the
Yeah, I read that. It said the law is the law. Very sensitive, yeah.
Yeah, so you know, there is a cost, and there's always those questions as to why did we incur a cost and who's making, you know, how many millions of dollars off this whole initiative. But we do believe this is a good initiative, and what it does is at the point of employment for an educator, it goes back and you do search everybody's complete criminal history, whether it's in Massachusetts or not. These fingerprinting checks are only done once. They're only done when you begin employment in a district. So once that initial piece is done, we don't go back and do this periodically, so there is no secondary cost once it's in place. After that, we just do the periodic Corey check, which we do every 2 years, which is just in Massachusetts.
Why did they eliminate, in other words, the Corey check was the check that we normally did.
We still do it.
We still do it
Still
now.
do it.
But why are they not satisfied with the Corey and now they want to go into fingerprinting?
I can say specific.
It's only, the Corey only looks at the Massachusetts record. So if a person has never left the state of Massachusetts, then it gives you a very comprehensive view of what their criminal history might be. But it doesn't touch on anything that happens in any other states. So technically a person could be guilty of an extremely heinous crime in another state, and it does not come up on your Massachusetts Corey. The fingerprinting is an attempt to get access to a national database. There might have been other ways to do it, but this is the way they're choosing to do it. So someone who has spent time in another state gives us a sense of what they might have done when they were there.
Now, if I read it correctly, I'm in Stoughton. Now, obviously, I haven't done anything in Stoughton to be fingerprinted for. But if and let's say I was someone who did, and I helped the Stoughton school system, and I wanted to go to out in the west of Massachusetts, I believe I would have to be fingerprinted again.
No. There's a form for, in order to prevent people from having to pay multiple times, if a person moves from one district to another, the new district can ask the sending district, the old district, for a suitability determination. So if I look at someone's fingerprint history and decide that they are suitable to employ here, then I can tell that to another district. And the person does not need to have their fingerprints done a second time.
Except if I move to another state, that's another different story.
Different
Is-
states will have their own rules.
Yes.
And what we put in is, we put in specific language that if you did move out of state, move back to Massachusetts, we would do another fingerprint check. We wouldn't take a suitability determination. Same thing is we're capping it at 7 years. Well, at least in this policy, what I put in was, we'll take something within the last 7 years. So if it's more than 7 years, we're going to reserve the right to go back and have another fingerprint check run.
So 7 years is the maximum that you will allow. That means every teacher, every person that works in the school system, whatever, they have to do that every 7 years.
No, what I'm saying is if we have somebody move into district, so we hire somebody and they were employed in another school district for say 10 years, and when they began their employment, they were fingerprinted. We're going to say that we're going to go ahead and run the fingerprint check again, because 10 years is a long time. And I just didn't want it where, 20 years from now, we're taking a suitability determination. And I don't think it's valid any longer. And if it's a term of employment with us, I would feel much more comfortable knowing that the person had a fingerprint check and we could look at everything at that onset of employment, even though it was done 20 years ago, because I don't feel that's valid any longer. And if you wanted to adjust that date, that's certainly within the purview of the committee. That was the piece that I put in, and that was based on the regulation itself, suggested language from the regulation.
Thank you.
Ms. Husseini?
Under the fingerprinting Q&A sheet, that's item 2, there's a fee associated with fingerprinting. Second paragraph says any employee, volunteer not licensed by DESE will pay $35. Examples are cafeteria workers, secretaries, custodians, building tradesmen, paraprofessionals, coaches, private lesson teachers, and school committee members. I didn't see it in other places in the thing. Are we subject to fingerprinting as well?
Well,
I just saw
If you're
that.
around the children, yeah.
Again, what it comes down to is
If you're unsupervised.
unmonitored contact with children. This is most likely to happen during a field trip or in the case of, say, an overnight band trip or something of that sort. So if any of you were to wish to participate in the lives of our school children in that way, then anyone who would be having unmonitored contact with children would be required to be fingerprinted like everyone else.
And that's okay with me.
Absolutely.
I would not have a problem with that.
Who's going to pay for my money?
I wouldn't care.
Pay my $55.
You are not licensed by DESE that I know of, and so you would not be
$35.
charged $55.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from?
No.
Okay, so I will revisit this next meeting.
Can I add something at this point?
Please.
I think, again, for the committees, because this is a yearly thing, all of us either do go in and read to to classes or do other volunteer work, we are, in fact, required to submit a query. So that is something that you should do at the beginning of the school year.
Well, I do that because my kids are in school.
I
but,
understand, likewise, but I'm just saying that for the other members, if that is something you participate in, that has been standard practice on this committee.
I have to have one.
Yeah, no, I know you do.
But if they are not having individual contact with contact with individual children, do they? I'm sure Katie does it.
Parents who participate in classroom, don't they all have to?
Yep.
Even if they're supervised?
If you go to classroom, you do?
Everyone needs a query.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right, I'll
we do
need
it
one.
every 2 years.
So
Every
parents
year,
are
everyone
every
needs a
year,
query.
Teachers every other year.
Teachers are actually every 3 by contract.
Every 3?
How do I go about getting a query?
You do it tonight, you just fill out a form.
Mary has a form you fill out.
Okay, Mary, you're on.
Sorry, Mary, for volunteering you.
Yeah.
Okay. Seeing no other discussion on this topic, we are on item number 6. Last time we voted to have a new set of policies developed by MASC over the next 3 years. And Jonathan Mr. Ford reminded me that we haven't really designated any people to interact with the MASC. So that's why we put it in the area to discuss that. Mr. Ford?
You actually, at this point, we already signed the contract. We're working to, you'll see a warrant soon, so we can go ahead and pay the bill. Once they have the signed contract and we've paid our fee for the year, they're going to ask for a project liaison officer, just one person, to represent the school committee, and it would be a member of the school department administration. So really, what you would need to do tonight is assign your project liaison officer, and that person would then interact with MASC once they've been paid, and to start setting up a time frame, submit the required materials, and go through whatever process they want to go through for bringing the material forward to the committee.
Okay. I thought it would be a good idea because these are school committee policies, and this is a liaison for the school committee. Mr. Ford and I discussed that it would be 2 representatives, one from the administration and one from the school committee. So Mr. Ford is now telling me that it has to be 1, so I would like to check that with the MASC.
I actually brought their documentation because I went and reread all this before coming to the meeting tonight.
Okay,
Make sure
it
that
would be
MASC
it would have been good, to follow up on our discussion before the meeting, so we both would be on the same page.
Well, I just read it before coming in here, so
Okay, so we'll take it up at the next meeting.
Well, one of the things, though, if we do want to get this going, it's simply a vote of the school committee to identify, and I'll read the quote here. The committee should identify a knowledgeable member of the administrative staff to serve as a project liaison officer to whom MASC may refer from time to time with clarifying questions of fact or actual policy or practice in the school system. So, I mean, one of the things is, if you'd like to vote at least your project liaison officer, either myself, the superintendent, or whoever, that would be great. And then if we could come back and decide if we're going to add additional people at a later time, or even tonight, that would be great as well. But I would like to be in a position that once this all clears and we get first contact, I can just call them back the same day and get the process rolling. So
my idea is to wait 2 more weeks and evaluate it, and then you and I and Dr. Rizzi talk about it and come to the next meeting prepared. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Is there urgency in this, Mr. Ford, at all?
Well, there's how some people like to do things or whatever it might be, and there's how I like to do things, and I just like to get things done, everything.
I do too.
And generally when I look at this, if it comes back, I mean, all the paperwork's in.
Okay.
And I'm just expecting a call
So we're
probably
going to
within
get
the
a
next
warrant
week.
real soon for this, so everything has been done?
Everything that we need to do in order to get this project moving has already been done.
Okay.
So everything's been signed, everything's in process. And it's, you know, we can, I mean, we've waited this long, we could wait a year
Okay.
before kicking this off. But I just, if things need to get done, I just like to get them done. And I don't like waiting a week or 2 weeks or a month. But certainly it falls under the purview of the committee to initiate this process at any time you'd like and under your design, and
And if I'm
feel free to
and if I'm
come to a
understanding,
consensus as to how you'd like to proceed forward, and I'd be more than happy to.
If I'm understanding it right, is someone from your administrative team and someone from the school committee? Am I hearing that correct?
The MASC would like the school committee to identify a member of the administrative staff to serve as a project liaison officer.
Okay.
And they want it to be a member of the administrative staff because usually we have more experience working with the policies and implementation of the policies than the actual school committee, because we are responsible to implement the policies.
Agreed.
And we use them on a daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it might be basis. The other thing is they know that the person's going to be there when they call during the day. And they also have concerns if it goes, I mean, generally it goes between 1 and 2 years, that they're working with the same person, and members of the school committee may or may not be the same person
Gotcha.
throughout the duration of the project.
I got you.
So those would be the things they're looking at in terms of selecting someone to work with them on this project.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is update from Facilities Master Plan Committee. Ms. Husseini asked me
Hi,
to
Mr. Mitchell.
put this on the agenda. So I'll
you.
turn the floor over to Ms. Husseini.
Thank you. And this is, again, one of those committees that meets quite regularly, and we are charged with following through on the facility master plan that was done for both the town and schools. But our group specifically is a rollover from the entire committee that is now focused specifically on the schools. And with the number of large articles that have appeared in the last couple of town meetings, I thought it would be great to give you an update as to where we stand on all of those. We've had some great successes. Number one is the West School roof is done. The West School roof is done, and it was done under budget and, well, pretty much on time, minus the one little glitch that they ran into.
What was the glitch? I'm sorry.
Well, let me go through. I'll tell you that.
apologize,
Initially we had some study numbers from roof and window studies that were done many years prior. And the West School, for example, identified the roof being replaced at about $830,000. After we went through the MSBA process with all the soft costs and our first kind of experience with the architect that was assigned to us, the borrowing article had to be put in at $1.43 million. The good news is that the actual construction cost, including the extra work, which was that they discovered that it wasn't just a matter of replacing the roof from the decking up, but in fact the decking was crumbling and destroyed over the gym only, that it involved far more intensive replacement. The hard cost of construction came in at $558,000. If you add to that the soft cost of design, we're still coming in way under the study numbers and way under the numbers that we had asked for from town meeting with our borrowing articles. And the same is going to be true of the windows.
Yes.
The windows for the Hanson and the DAW, we had asked for a combined total of $2.5 million in borrowing. The hard construction cost is $1.3 million. Part of that is just, first of all, I got to tell you that Mr. Harding is his 20+ years of experience really helps us in this regard. But the decision to phase the windows so that they were replaced actually during the school year, mostly in winter, during vacation times and off hours, all of it will be off hours, saved a bundle, as opposed to forcing the construction project to happen during peak time, which is summer. So we are going to be starting the Hanson and the DAW windows. Right now it's scheduled for after Christmas vacation, but they have been told that if fabrication happens and the windows are ready before that, they will actually be starting during Christmas vacation. Along that lines, the Gibbons was the accelerated repair project for the Gibbons windows, doors, and roof will all be done in 1 year. Is going forward. We have been assigned an owner's project manager, and they are under contract. They are working on the contract with the architect at this point, and the Facilities Master Plan Committee is working diligently to develop articles that will be in before this board for insertion in the warrant for next annual town meeting so that we can fund those projects as well. The members of the committee are Chairman Doug Zorn, Mr. Fitzgerald, Justin Albert, Dan Wheeler, Lou Gito, Dr. Rizzi, and Mr. Harding. I have to tell you, we have taken that master plan that was developed in 2009. It has been torn apart, scrutinized. We've toured every building. We've looked under every rock, behind every boiler. We know where everything is. It's been evaluated. It's been applied against Joel's records of 20 plus years. And to date, we have, since the master plan has come into effect, we have replaced the Jones roof and electrical system, the projects that I just mentioned, the tennis courts, resurface a track, resodded the football field, replaced the master boxes, replaced the radio systems, done a ton of deferred maintenance, and are still doing a ton of deferred maintenance articles, and the servers, which were all identified as part of the master plan. So just want the people to know that, first of all, thank you. The master planning process was great. Thank you for your support at town meeting. Did I hit it all, Mr. Fitzgerald? Thank you.
Maybe I was a little confused, Ms. Sustaini. So agenda item number 8 is master plan. Your item is same as the repair projects?
It is, the facilities master plan is that group that looks at all the building systems as it relates to the facilities master plan that was developed in 2009. And part of what I hear, and not specific to this project, but you hear it on the town side a lot, is we pay for these plans and nobody ever uses them. I can tell you this plan has been used, and it has been used well, and it has been the driving decision-making force behind all of these.
The plan was completed when?
Well, it started in 2009, completed in 2010.
2010.
And this committee was formed at that time.
And anybody who wants to see the master plan,
Master
do we
plan's
have a
online.
copy?
It's actually on the school's website. I'd have to, it's on the town website, thank you.
It's big.
400 pages.
36 pages.
Okay.
And we've read them all.
And then
Yeah,
I'll
we
ask
have read them all.
I'll ask my standard questions. The meetings of this committee is public meetings. They are posted.
Believe so.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
And if somebody in the public or the board wanted to see the minutes, who would they go to get the minutes?
I would think they'd ask the chair.
Who's the chair?
It's Doug Zorn.
This committee doesn't have a secretary?
No.
Z-O-R-N?
Z-O-R-N.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board about item number 7?
Thank you for the update.
You're welcome. It kind of leads into,
The next one.
yeah, the MSBA repair projects.
Which kind of was that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know was on the agenda, so sorry for the repeating.
No problem.
Excuse me, just one question.
it
How do you
down.
spell, is it Zorn or
Yes.
Zorin?
Z-O-R-N, Zorn.
Z-O-R-N, okay.
Okay. I added item 8, so I was also looking for a similar kind of input, but there was also a continuation of the discussion from the last meeting. Mr. Fitzgerald came and talked about signing the certain documents for the MSBA part. And I told them that at the last meeting I said I'm not signing it because I don't understand. That was just an Excel worksheet that I was given. And it didn't have any signatures other than Dr. Rizzi. And the statements, the Excel files that they wanted me to sign, put some responsibility on my shoulders. And I said, I'm not going to sign these without understanding what they are. So we had a nice heart-to-heart talk with Mr. Hartman, Mr. Soares, and I went to his office. He's also in the same boat. He said he doesn't really understand it, but he mentioned that those Excel files that I was asked to sign, I didn't sign it because I didn't have the context, was a part of a bigger report. So he didn't give me the full report, but he gave me the cover pages of the appendices. And he said that was before. Do you recognize any of these? Or should I ask Doug Zorn?
Well, as chair, I certainly would have had them come before me if there had been work, but
Was there any report issued to, because the report that he showed us had some like a nice pictures for different schools.
no, I don't recall seeing that.
You don't have it?
No.
Okay, maybe we go back to Mr. Hartman and get a copy of the report.
Yeah. No, I'm
So you haven't seen
not
any of
familiar
these?
with that, no.
Okay, I'll ask Doug Zorn and Mr. Hartman. So in any case, so we both Mr. Hartman and I took a leap of faith, and then we signed them together. So they are out, and they were late to begin with. I don't know for what reason, but
Well, understand too that as this projects have progressed over the years, the program has gone from a green repair project to an accelerated repair project. We're only in the second year of the accelerated repair project, so the rules and the paperwork is probably significantly different. Back then, the green repairs didn't require the hiring of an OPM. It didn't use the ProPay system, and there were other less bureaucracy.
Right. So I mean, it's just the process. So I like to have all these information to be available either through superintendent's office or town website or through town offices to anybody who wants to see it, because they are complex projects.
Absolutely are.
And as you say, they are constantly evolving. So it'll be great to be able to document all these. So.
But I'd like to add as well that, we've done these projects for years in the past. We've replaced just about every roof. This is actually, the Gibbons will be our last roof for a while until the next cycle starts. And we had done them in the past all on our own dime. And as much as we may complain about a bureaucracy that has been created and working with the OPMs and architects, it is still a huge cost savings to the town to participate in these projects with them. So
And
we're very
I
grateful.
will also add that the MSBA does not ask us to do anything that they do not ask all other districts to do. And the process of the paperwork has to be expedited by all the people who are required to sign it and work with it. And it is a consistent process, whether it's Stoughton or whether it's someplace else. So that's the way they do business. They've arranged the processes they have in order to save our money and their money. And they're an extremely credible organization. And so the work that they ask us to do, I think we need to be perfectly happy to do, given the almost 60% reimbursement.
Well, I appreciate superintendent's comment that they are asking everybody the same questions. So perhaps the type of the table and the entries are the same, but what MSBA is asking me and the town manager to certify is that the numbers that have been typed in here are correct and true. And without the context, it's unfair for anybody to sign these. So that's why I was looking for the context, and that was missing. And I'm still trying to figure out, document the context. Any discussion on either item 7 or 8 or questions? No? Moving right along. Item number 9, the high school project.
Okay, I'm going to speak to that. I was at the
Please do.
meeting. I was at the meeting, and we had a tour, and we went through all of the different areas in the building, led by Mr. Harding. We seen burners, we seen classrooms, auditoriums, cafeteria, and at the point now, they're putting together or working on the finality of the proposal with that specific committee.
I missed the last sentence. You're putting together a proposal?
They're completing the work that needs to be, the paperwork that needs to be submitted to the MSBA for this Stoughton High School project.
What kind of...
Why are you looking at me like you don't see me?
I would like to understand, so what kind of paperwork? I thought this was the beginning of a long process to do the feasibility study.
And that's what they're putting together.
So the feasibility study is done, or
They're working on that right now.
maybe Mr. Fitzgerald, would you like to? Oh, you
He
weren't
has
there?
nothing to do it. Joe Harding was in it. And you were there also.
I can certainly speak to the process. The feasibility study is not yet done. Fortunately, and actually the folks at the MSBA have complimented Stoughton on this a number of times. The town meeting had the wisdom, 130 to 6, to vote the feasibility study money. So we will be able to go right into the feasibility study, having been invited into the process and gotten into this phase. In order for the feasibility study to, it usually takes 8 to 9 months once it gets started. In order to start the feasibility study, the committee has to hire an owner's project manager, and that is the process in which the committee is currently engaged. When an owner's project manager has been identified, then the feasibility study will commence.
So the paperwork is for hiring the OPM?
That is correct.
Yes.
And the OPM is that somebody we pick, or the MSBA picks, or both?
Both.
Any other questions on this topic? I just had an update from last meeting. I had read a letter that I had written to the Board of Selectmen chair to direct town manager to tell the school committee who the members of the building committee are. And I still haven't received an official response either from Selectman Recupero or town manager, so I guess he hasn't been directed. But again, Mr. Soares have done some legwork and went and tried to track things down. It turned out Mr. Hartman is alleging that he has, when he sent the appointment letters, he has carbon copied school committee for all, I guess, 10 or 11 members. And then he's also alleging that he has put that into in the what was it, Joe?
Interoffice mail.
Interoffice mail. So Joe tracked down what happens to the information. So maybe I'll ask him to speak on this subject.
Well, basically, I went and saw Mary. I just wanted to know how the mail was distributed once it leaves town hall.
Could you speak up?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can't hear me?
Can't hear you from there.
I apologize, sir. I had the same problem when I would come to these meetings. I went and saw Mary, and Mary stated that what she normally does is when she gets all of the school committee, what am I trying to say, mail, that she puts it all in Dr. Rizzi's box. And I believe we had another conversation over the phone to where she had said that she was trying to find that particular memo, but couldn't find it. And then what she did was she established a point of where the school committee mail would go. Not each person having their own individual box, but one spot. Am I saying that correctly, Mary? And basically that's where we are right now with it.
So my question to the superintendent is, did she receive those appointment letters, carbon copied, to school committee?
No.
Okay, so Mr. Hartman says she sent it, and Dr. Rizzi says she hasn't received it. I guess we will leave it at that. But Joe has identified a problem that the school committee mail is coming to the superintendent's box, and how that is communicated to the school committee members. I remember 3 different I'm sorry?
In general would sort it. It was always one I would sort it out. But now we have two different mail bins.
So now Ms. Shea created a new mailbox for the school committee alone. But I was just talking more in general, you know, so that these kind of things don't happen in the future. Is in the past, we had, if something, Ms. Shea would open it or somebody would alert her, and then if something is urgent, she would just send it to us by email. She would scan it. And if something that can be that can wait, you would put it in the packets, or sometimes we put in the packets. Sometimes just leave it in the school committee room, right?
If it became the day of a meeting, I would just put it in with the warnings.
Oh, okay.
It depends on when it came and when a packet was going out.
But maybe we should ask you. I don't know what's the will of the committee is to open the school committee mail. And if it's something urgent, because unless you open it, you can't really decide if it's something urgent or not. Does the board think it's a good idea to do it that way?
Well, if you're going to expedite it, I think it makes sense to do it that way. Anybody else have any ideas?
I think Mary has a lot to cover in her regular job, and that would be another added burden on her. She discussed, she already has discussed that, that she has a lot to do in her regular job, and this is only going to be another added burden on her. I don't think I want to put that kind of burden on her.
It's okay.
It's okay with you? Okay, because I knew you expressed that we were putting a lot on you, and I don't want to. Okay. Minutes. Okay. All right. All right. Just didn't want to bother you. Okay.
Yeah, this time because of.
Correspondence is fine. Okay. As long as it's okay with you, Mary, I'm good. It is.
Mary worked extra hard with this for this production of finance committee. Ms. Anzavino's request, because we normally are 2 to 3 months behind, and we had a lot of special town meetings going on. So Ms. Shea worked really hard, and we thank her for that. Anything else on item number 9? No? Okay. Item number 10 is, I added this, advanced public access to open meeting documents of the school committee. I'll tell you what I'm thinking. Then we'll see what's the sense of the committee, which is Ms. Shea already creates for us a PDF file that contains the school committee member packets. And so what we are, what I was thinking is, people come to our meetings. So we don't give out all these handouts. So if we let them have it before the meeting, then they could have, maybe more benefit out of the meeting, and maybe we get more participation. So I was thinking for us to post these comments when they are available. They are usually available Friday before the school committee meeting. So that was an idea that occurred to me. How does the rest of the board feel? Yes?
It's actually a discussion that I had in the past with Dr. Gray in terms of the ability to create the place for that. And he and I both looked at a number of school systems that already do that. Yeah. And in talking to Ms. Shea about that as well, put in place a process by which most everything that comes in our packet is now stamped draft, because it was very, it was concerned if we were going to be posting something publicly that it wouldn't have that watermark on it and that people would take it as adopted. So I think that it's largely in place. My biggest concern would be, I guess, the haste at which the packets are put together these days, and that as long as you are giving Ms. Shea enough time to create that packet and get it out to us, which is not an easy thing to accomplish, that the posting it after the fact, it wouldn't be in place of, but it would be after all the other requirements in terms of posting and getting the packets out to us. But it would, have to coordinate with the technology director to adapt the web page and whatever. But other schools do it, and it was always something that I thought had great value as well.
Yeah. Maybe to address one of your concerns, Ms. Husseini, is that we could ask the attorney to draft a simple 1 or 2 sentence caveat. So that would be like a cover page saying that this will be, these are the minutes. These are the documents that will be reviewed. They are for discussion purpose only, or something
Well,
like that.
they are public information,
Yeah,
but like
they
I
are
said,
public.
I think it's just as important to make sure everything's watermarked because they can be separated out from a document and the lawyer's caveat removed.
But still, if they ask for the public document, we'll give them the public document. Any other discussion from the?
Yeah, I would like to ask a question. It was already said that, we get I get it in Saturday's mail. That gives me Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Sometimes I'm not as forthcoming as I should be because of being caught up with life, the way life is, etc. Is there any way that we can get it earlier? That would be my concern.
Not when the agenda's not being developed until the last minute. And that's one of the things, too, I'd like to add at this point, because I think there are a lot of things in here that are put on the agenda that we don't know what it means until we get to this meeting. I would like to see a lot more thought being put into, and likewise, if I should have been able to submit to you my summary on the facilities master plan to be included in the packet as well. So guilty as well, but I think we've gotten very lax at providing a packet to our own group, and I think we need to maybe focus on that first and get that nailed down. And then I would like to see that happen, but I think it would make sense to first have a packet that really reflects the agenda.
I think Mr. Soares is looking to get the packet like a week before the meeting.
I'll take whatever you give me, but yes.
Traditionally, school committee always got their packets on Saturday.
Is that right?
This is my 6th year on the board, as we always get it on Saturday. And this year, Ms. Shea is so great, she gives us the electronic packet on Fridays. But I tell you, Friday afternoon, nobody looks at it.
Been receiving the electronic packet on Fridays for several years due to me using the iPad strictly as my means of looking at minutes or looking at the agenda.
Dr.
Yes.
I have another thing. In reference to the haste in putting these issues on here, when are we going to put some things on here about teaching and learning? I haven't seen in the past anything about teaching and learning. We're doing a lot of policy, a lot of procedures, a lot of updates on building, but I see nothing. And I looked at the past packets, nothing in reference to us discussing teaching and learning. Could you address that, please?
That'll be my pleasure. I'll give you 2 complimentary answers. One is I ask all the members at the beginning of my term as the chair, please, I'm looking for ideas for topics, agenda topics. And Ms. Husseini came up with one, or maybe more than one. Ms. Enochian did, Mr. Soares did. So I would welcome input from you.
I wasn't here. Remember, I wasn't here when you changed over to being, so I didn't hear that.
You were here, but
remember, I wasn't here. It's
now
my turn. When you turned over to you being the person in charge, excuse me, I wasn't here, so I didn't hear that. So if I had heard that, I would gladly give you some ideas.
So
Okay.
Please.
I sure will.
Okay.
And this other answer is that the responsibilities of the school committee, Chapter 71, Section 37, we have 3 responsibilities. One is hire and fire the superintendent. The other one is the budgets. And the third one is the policies. So that's why you see agenda topics.
Teaching and learning, teaching and learning would come inside some of the policies.
So I would look forward to your
Not a
input.
problem. Jonathan, can we make sure we get some more teaching and learning on here so I can feel like I'm doing something here?
Set the agenda.
Okay.
Right.
Can I
forgot
add?
about that.
Yeah,
Because
please,
during my time as chair, the focus was because, it was to have Mr. Ford at least once a month present something
Great.
that was curriculum-based.
Yeah.
And as, particularly this time of year, as it pertained to the budget, because it helps not only educate the public as to what's happening, it educates this committee as to what the focuses are from the improvement plans and how they are addressing them in the curriculum that help us guide our ability to manage the budget. And that was something that was coordinated through Dr. Rizzi's office, where we would pick a topic every month that would be presented that, again, would help the schools or the public understand what the focus of the schools was.
Sure. Now, I just like to correct the record. Mr. Ford said I don't set the agenda. It's, well, maybe true for Mr. Ford's sake, but it's not true for the superintendent's office sake, because I always start the agenda with the agenda starter from the superintendent's office. On Thursday, I get an agenda that lists the topics that the superintendent wishes to include.
I agree with you.
So I get, I mean,
That's
otherwise,
most
where would I
certainly
come
not
up
the
with the
case.
acceptance of bids?
With the bids on and stuff.
With those items that legally have to be voted on. Yeah.
So they, superintendent's office sends me what superintendent's office wants to be on the agenda. And I add a few more items to it. And then I also ask the superintendent, you know, please feel free to call me anytime. And so far, she hasn't done that.
So Dr. Earl, when you
Yes.
finish, so can we put it back on it that, Mr. Ford, could you please do a monthly something so I feel that I'm reaching the kids and getting some teaching and learning down here? I'm an educator. And I take this very seriously.
You would ask through the chair of the superintendent. I would.
Yes. Mhm.
It's,
Could we make sure that happens so I can feel like we're moving the kids up? Because right now, we're bogged down on a lot of this, and I'm not feeling that I'm getting, and the
it's-
public's not hearing this either.
if
School
it's the
just
will
started.
of the committee, it's not my agenda to set.
Okay.
So,
Could we give him some, could we give Dr. Erdem some input on that as far as something, as far as teaching and learning?
well, I hear you are doing that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both down there.
I certainly can't put something on the agenda that the gentleman is not interested in having, so.
That's not a fair statement to say. Maybe you can tell me something you wanted to put on that was not included on the agenda.
Would you like to go back to the curriculum update once a month on the agenda?
Could you just say yes so we can get some of this done?
But we can do one and then see if the committee likes it, because
But that's what we're
there
here
is,
for.
wait a minute. I'm getting conflicting requests from the school committee members. Some members say the meetings are already too long. We got too many agenda topics. So if you do a curriculum update, you know, that may take 10 minutes extra, maybe sometimes up to half an hour extra. So let's do one. If you like to do curriculum update, let's do one. And then let the committee decide. It's the committee's agenda. It's not my agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Erdem, because what I'm finding is when I talk with my constituents out here, they're speaking to me saying that we're doing more of the policy stuff. And I understand our role. I read it and I took the course just like you did. However, we're not talking about teaching and learning. School has just started. We should be talking about welcoming the kids back to school. I'm glad you're all doing so well. I hope the year's going to go good from the school committee. We're putting our best interests forward to support you. I heard none of that. The parents waiting to hear this. Right, parents?
I'm all for trying it. Let's see what happens with it. I think Dr. Brown has an excellent idea.
Yes,
Okay.
something.
And let's try it,
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Soros.
if you're willing.
Any?
Lizzie is willing?
So it seems like the consensus is to post these on the school website, on the school committee website. Am I reading it correctly?
I would like, however, to see us focus a little bit better on getting a packet put together. And I'll go off on what Dr. Brown mentioned about, you know, talking, there's agenda items on here. You said our agenda is already really long. take item number 3 today, traffic safety around schools, was a long conversation. If in fact that had been something where the discussion had taken place between yourself and the superintendent ahead of time, maybe a description of the transportation task force and some of the items provided in the packet, the discussion that happened and the length of the discussion could have been avoided. And that would have been incredibly useful information for the public to have as well in that written form. But now all they have is a tape that is long, cumbersome to go through, and nothing written for proof of it except minutes with just a highlight of it. I think if we can work on tightening up this agenda and the information that goes with it first, then talk about putting it out to the public. I think to do both is a little ambitious.
I kind of disagree, because the purpose of this is to provide the public up-to-date information on what the school committee is looking at.
But how can you provide up-to-date information if you're
That's
catching
the thing,
people by
you-
surprise
One
at the
time. I
table?
can't hear two
I'm
people.
not interrupting you, so, but the purpose of this is, we say, this is what the school committee is looking at. And then if you, some other stuff that will be discussed at the meeting. So the purpose of this is not to provide bi-monthly progress reports. So it's just the, whatever, this is to show the people this is what the school committee is looking at.
I respectfully disagree.
Dr. Erdem, can I just say something here? I agree with the both of you all, but we need to put some time frames on these. You know, if we're gonna get out of here, and I'm gonna bring this up in other matters when that time comes up about the amount of time we're spending. If we put some time increments on each one of these, I think it'll be a little bit better, and I think it'll be more tolerable.
Efficient.
Yeah.
Do you think,
Well,
do you think
Well,
people
she's
will
got a
obey
point.
the time?
Well, I'll be the timer.
Yeah, but we can do, but we can do some saying, and all of these things can be discussed, and I'm with you. They need to know, the public needs to know. However, that was a long conversation. It went for about 23 minutes because I timed it. And it just took too long to talk about that. But if you gave it a specific amount of time, I think I could be happy with that.
I would
I
like
don't
to,
see any other board doing that.
all right, I would like to make a comment.
Okay.
When we put up topics here, and I thought Dr. Rizzi did a very fine job in explaining that, okay? But it's very difficult to know how long a topic is going to take. Now, if we keep talking about that same topic every 2 weeks, et cetera, then obviously we'll have less to talk about, okay? But traffic safety is now becoming a big issue. Maybe it's always been a big issue. Okay? So anyway, I'm just giving you my thoughts and my ideas on that.
Okay.
There are certain topics that are going to take time. There are certain topics that aren't going to take that much time. And what we need to do, my opinion, is to play it by ear, because we're trying to really refine and to do certain things for what we believe should be a credit to the schools, to the students, etc. And right now, I'm still finding my way. I don't know about how you feel, but I'm still
fine.
finding my way.
Yes, part of the uncertainty is, this could be with the topics, because some topics there is more committee members are interested, or there is some controversy. And other topics, and then we have 2 new committee members, although they are getting pretty seasoned here. So certain topics take more time. Some of them are really technical. It takes a long time to grapple it. So I didn't, I mean, I like the idea of, because my wife always asks me, when are you coming home?
My husband says the
when
same thing.
When the meeting is over. But I mean, if you guys want, we can put a time limit on the meeting. And if it's not finished, then we can do an interim meeting, or
We see enough for
add
you.
the stuff to the other agenda item, because some of this, there has to be a committee vote. There has to be discussion. So, I mean, this is your meeting. I'm just running it for you. So if you want to put a time limit, so you want to say it like we cut the meeting off at 9 o'clock?
Dr. Erdem, can I say something?
Yes.
I was going to bring that up on other matter times when we got that. If you want to, unless you want me to answer this now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, because sometime the last meeting was here till 11:35 okay? I have a real job. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, so 11:35 to 4 in the morning, I have to run a school. That's not enough sleep for me. So I'm looking to be out of here by 10, and I have to leave at 10 from now on. Not 10:01, at 10. I have to have a certain amount of time to rest, prepare myself for my students for the next day.
So you want the meeting to be done and the executive session to be done
I'm
by
leaving at 10.
10 o'clock?
I have to leave at 10.
How does the
11:30 is too late
how
for
do
me.
the other members feel?
Well, again, if
You have to
there's
have a
no
job
voting to be
first.
done,
It has to be done.
Don't have a job.
if there's no voting to be done, then certainly she could leave at 10 o'clock.
She's leaving at 10.
I mean, that's the individual choice of the
Yeah.
Individual
So you're
committee member.
saying that the committee member can leave anytime they so desire.
No,
And then the meeting
I'm
continues
having
so
an
long as
open
there is a
meeting so we can
I'm
talk
just
about
trying
it.
to figure out what
Okay.
he's trying to say. Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm trying to say that if people have certain commitments,
Dr. Brown,
it doesn't matter, Doctor, whether it's you or anybody else.
Okay.
I mean, anybody else
Anybody.
can have a commitment. But if people have certain commitments, we're all adults, and we do what we need to do.
okay, thank you.
That's what I'm basically saying.
So you were arguing when you were saying that we should have time limit, but now you're saying we shouldn't have time limit?
Well, see, I'm one of those guys that
Don't work.
if you want to, we really right now, I don't believe, can put time limits on certain things, okay? But we should be working towards that. Now, we could try to put a time limit on it, but if we're not finished with a certain discussion, then we continue on.
Dr. Brown, maybe we can, because right now we arrange the agenda so that were we looking for outside input, we put those first, like the traffic safety around schools. I thought Mr. Batchelder was going to come, so that's why I put that up front.
Okay.
So maybe, to accommodate you, we can do like a
I think she has
vote-
the same, she has children. Everybody has a life
I
in
do
here.
too.
Okay, so,
But maybe we can do try to put the voting items first.
it doesn't make a difference to me, Dr. Erdem, as long as I'm out at 10 o'clock, because again, I'm up at 4 in the morning and I have to run a school the next day. And I can't do it being asleep.
Well, what does Ms. Enochian think?
I think we should just make an effort to try to be more efficient with the agendas.
Thank you.
And you and me and Dr. Rizzi will have our meetings before. And maybe we can
never
shorten
were
the
able to
agenda.
meet.
That
Yes.
makes, I agree with you on that one.
No, well,
Agree.
partly because when we tried to do that, it was summertime and I was away and
Well, in
Dr.
all
Rizzi was
fairness,
away.
we did have a meeting with Dr. Rizzi's designee last week.
Right. Well, she couldn't help that she got injured.
But she said that we should meet with Mr. Ford, so we did.
My suggestion?
Yes.
I go back to, I would like to see something in the packet from each item because I think that helps us prepare for the meeting. We come here and ask a lot of questions, and it would give us the opportunity to prepare, to do our research and to formulate our questions. Secondly, I think it's a great idea, and I've seen a lot of school committees do it on their agenda, to highlight, just put the word vote after an agenda item to indicate that there will be, or there needs to be a vote on an item, so that if anybody does have a conflict and needs to leave for any reason, that we can, prioritize those things that are voted. I do think it's important that we prioritize those agenda items where the public is involved or where we invite staff members to come to speak as well. But I think highlighting what needs to be voted is a good place to start as well. And it probably wouldn't hurt for us to say informally, any agenda item should be worth 10 minutes, and then a reminder afterwards is, look, we're coming past that 10-minute mark. Maybe it's time to wrap it up and get on to the next thing. Not necessarily a hard and fast rule, but a
It's a
guide.
ballpark area.
Excellent suggestions, Joyce.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I run a
So
lot of
then-
meetings.
So then the general consensus is to do 10 minutes sort of guideline.
Yeah.
Guideline.
Sounds good to
So
me.
we
Sounds
got
good to me also.
we got 100. Well, we got 14 items. So that's 140 minutes.
Well, correspondence is typically
That would
a
be 2
non-item.
hours, so a little bit over
And
2
then
hours.
Acceptance
after
of
that,
minutes
you
is
would
typically a
have
non-item.
executive session.
Yes. I suspect many of these items will go a lot faster than 10 minutes. They don't get to use your leftover time against another item.
Okay, so the consensus is to
I think we
have,
spent more than 10 minutes on this.
try to do 10 minutes, and then somebody gives us a 10-minute warning.
We'll come up with a
And then
little
the committee-
countdown clock.
Committee, we can like a chess play.
Yep.
No, I think it sounds, we can try it. Let's see what happens to it.
And thank you, Dr. Earl, for, I know I emailed the committee, keeping the public comment to 15 minutes today and limiting the speakers. It is our policy. I think it's important. I also think it's important that we start right on time because people do tune in. People watch this and they expect to see it at 7 o'clock and anything that we can do we're here to serve the public and I think we need to be on time and follow our policies to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Hussaini. The one thing I was going to ask you is please refrain from sending emails to all committee members for obvious reasons because they may be tempted to answer.
It
and
was
then,
not
that would be
was not something to deliberate.
that
Good point.
that could be a problem.
Okay.
Any other discussion on item number 10?
Doctor, let me just say, I do commend you for that today, keeping those at the 15 minutes. I want to thank you for
It
that.
was Ms. Enoki and it was the time.
Thank you both. That was good.
Item number 11 is
I'm sorry, what do we agree on with item number 10?
we are going to
try.
do as a guideline, not a hard and fast rule. After 10 minutes on each topic, somebody will keep the time and
No, I
say,
understand that. Advanced public access to open meeting documents. Okay, that's
oh yeah,
really what
that's a
number
good
10
point.
is.
So, I mean, we can do it two ways. I was hoping to do it in the school committee, I mean, the Stoughton Public Schools webpage. But I think the consensus here was to develop the packages more so that they could be more complete documentation can be put in there. But maybe it was just Ms. Hussaini opposing it.
I didn't oppose it.
No, you said you wanted to.
I want
wait.
you do need to coordinate with the technology director to
Right.
put the place there. So in the meantime, I think it is a good goal for us to develop the packets more thoroughly, and then maybe at that time the repository for the documents will be ready.
Well, this was not going to be well, it could be a repository, but I was just going to start with the next meeting. The other thing is to just post it on a public web page. But I like to do it because these are all public documents. So I would rather see it on the Stoughton Public Schools webpage for a short time so people can just look at it. This is not like a permanent or archival documentation, just to give the people a flavor, or at least anything they are interested, they could print it out, and maybe it can disappear before the next meeting.
I don't.
So I'm not talking about repository.
That's neither here nor there. Either way, the content management system of the website dictates that there need to be a place for it to be uploaded to
Yes.
by Mrs. Shea. So
Yes.
she can't just post it until, yeah.
Do you want to bring this up the next meeting and just put it on the agenda for next meeting?
No, I think there is a consensus to create a slot.
Ryan, if he gives me a place to put it, I can put it.
Yeah.
I think we should be instructing Dr. Rizzi to ask the technology director to do that, because that is not Mr. Shea's responsibility to have to do that.
Thank you. So Ms. Shea will ask Mr.
No,
Dr. Rizzi.
Dr. Rizzi will ask Ryan, what's his last name? McGee, to create a slot, and then for the next meeting we will put the packet on the slot on Friday before the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Source, for staying to the subject. Moving right along, item number 11. Financial transfers. At the last budget that was approved by the school committee in November of 2013. A number of positions were added to fiscal 15 budget, which we're in now. So the superintendent hired, as far as I know, 2 reading teachers, 0.4 guidance counselor, transitional kindergarten stipends were awarded. Alternative education teacher for high school was hired.
That is incorrect.
You did not hire alternative high.
It was contingent upon the Dean of Discipline job being hired, and therefore we've not been able to do so.
Okay, so she hasn't hired the alternative education teacher. 7 late run buses were added. Extended day, would they teachers? Extended day, I guess teacher stipends.
That's correct for after-school enrichment and remediation.
And remediation, that was done. Extended day high school was done. A teacher for West Elementary has been hired. Adjustment counselor for special education was hired. Early childhood coordinator for Jones School was hired. Special education teacher for middle school was hired. And special education teacher was hired for high school. The committee decided that they will not support Unit B positions for the Dean of Discipline, the K-5 elementary STEM curriculum coordinator, and K-5 humanities curriculum coordinator. So do we have the money in the budget for these positions? So at this point, the school committee attorney advised that we put this on the agenda to discuss what we can do with this money. I have asked the superintendent. I sent her an email. Find it.
I will read the email if you'd like.
Can I just say something before you read the email? Dr. Erdem, can I say something, please?
Yes.
I did not, you said the school committee voted not to hire, I was not one to vote not to hire the coordinators.
Likewise.
Since I thought that they needed to be here.
Okay.
I'm not finished talking, so don't disrespect me. I did not vote not to hire the coordinators because I have to go into schools and evaluate teachers, and we do need those people. So I did not vote against that, for the record.
That is true. That was.
Just wanted that to be known to the public.
So the public knows that you did not vote, and
Joyce didn't.
Ms. Husseini is also saying that she did not vote. That's her
did not
prerogative to do that.
To what, say that I didn't vote or to not vote for something that we all said we would support publicly?
Both.
You voted. Well, you tell me what your vote is.
First of all, I need to ask this because this was a vote that was taken in executive session. Are we free to discuss this? Because I had something prepared because I am deeply concerned about a vote taken on support of a budget, which is a public information. It is something that we have discussed publicly before. It has been part of the budget, which is public, and then a vote was taken in executive session. So by you bringing this item to the table, am I free to discuss the vote that was taken in executive session?
As far as I know, this vote came as a part of the negotiate. Was it a request for
It's part of the
bargaining.
impact bargaining, but they're
Impact
two
bargaining,
separate,
so it
two
came-
separate items. Impact
And,
bargaining is impact bargaining. This was a vote on our support of the budget that you chose to do in executive session.
I did not choose it. It's the attorney said that we had to do it.
He said we had to.
And,
He said we had to vote our support of those positions in executive session.
Yeah, that's what he said.
I'd like to see that
You're
ruling.
welcome to check with him.
I will. Can I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
You have an obligation to vote publicly or release the minutes in their entirety of the recent vote taken in executive session concerning the funding of the budgeted positions. The entire budget, including 15 new positions, was supported by this body and approved by town meeting. It was further publicly stated in an open meeting by each of the individuals at this table that they would support the hiring of all new positions in the budget. If discussion and vote take place concerning these positions, that discussion needs to be in open session so the voters have access to that information. I am deeply concerned about the process that happened, and that, in fact, we are now saying that this body voted not to support, 3-2, not to support the hiring of those 3 positions that a town meeting based their approval and of our budget on. So I want, for the record, to be known that I absolutely disagree with the vote that was taken, and that I expect everybody to be able to express why to the public, because the public are the people who put you in office. And you talked about this being the Committee of Transparency early in today's meeting. This is probably one of the most non-transparent items that this committee has ever done.
That is, well, if I may explain or answer, the town meeting did not vote for the positions.
They voted for the budget. Oh.
Please sit down. The town meeting voted for the bottom line. If you look at the,
I asked you
please do not
You
disrupt
sure
the meeting. The town meeting votes for the bottom line. If you look at the policy, we have there is a policy for the absolute authority of the school committee to do the budget of the school department. The previous committee approved the positions as a part of the budget. And then we had some additional information that came out, more analysis
You
that came
didn't share
up.
that with us in executive session, I might add. You said there was additional information. To me, that leads to me to believe that the money was needed perhaps to fund other line items.
The information was presented at the executive session as a part of the bargaining discussion.
I honestly am very confused, and I'm going to really need you to help me work through this particular issue, because I certainly do not have an understanding of what the additional information was. So I need to hear what that was, and then
so
look at what was the reasoning behind this. I'm so confused by some. So I really need you all to explicate for me. I certainly never heard any additional information, and I certainly would be, I feel like I would certainly like to hear what that is.
Okay. So what I'll do is also Ms. Husseini is challenging that the lawyer's recommendation was not in that direction. So what I will do is at the next meeting, I will put this on the agenda and also have the school committee attorney to come and explain why things happened in the executive session. And we'll take it from there.
So is it possible now to get an understanding of what that additional information was?
The information presentation was made to the school committee, and I mean personally, I looked at the previous budgets. For example, the Dean of Discipline. In fiscal 13, we had a Director of Student Discipline. It was for, we paid $56,000. In fiscal 14, we still had a Director of Student Discipline. We paid $45,000. In fiscal 15, we created a Unit B position for the year-round, and the Dean of Discipline salary would be bumped as a part of the Unit B to $88,000. So to me, that was not fiscally responsible. It would make the school committee, I mean, the school department top-heavy.
May I ask a
And,
question?
well, you asked me, I'm explaining. Please don't interrupt. I don't
Wait a
interrupt
minute,
you.
hon. I'm trying to hear this.
And the curriculum coordinator,
Thank you.
it was first introduced for ELA. It was first introduced in fiscal 13, budgeted for $87,000. So that was K through 12. In fiscal 14, it was K through 12. The salary was fiscal 14, $93,000. So that's 7.1% raise over the original budgeted amount. And fiscal 15, we want to reduce the responsibility. Instead of K through 12, we are making this person 6 through 12 and giving him an additional 8% raise to a salary of $100,585.
So
STEM,
now, may I ask
STEM
a question?
curriculum coordinator, fiscal 13, the budgeted amount was $87,000. In fiscal 14, we paid a salary for that position, again, K through 12, $104,506. That's a 20% raise. And fiscal 15, we are making that position 6 through 12 and giving that person an additional 7.3% raise to make it a $112,000 salary. So to me, these are all fiscally unresponsible steps. Unit B has grown. We currently have 10 people in Unit B. We are making 13 people. So its proposal is to make it 13 people. So I mean, I voted to not support that position.
So if I could just ask a clarifying question. So the new information that you're speaking of is actually information that's been available in the FY13 and 14 budgets and the FY15 budget proposal. So the difference between when the committee supported these positions and when the committee, at least 3, chose not to support them is based on an examination of previous budgets, not new information.
That was the analysis that I have done. There has also been a number of presentations
And what
by
was
the
the
Unit
new
B people and
information?
Unit A people. And it's my responsibility to go with, make the decision on the best information that's available to me at the time it is made. So that's
but
what
the
I have
new
done.
information, so the information that was in the 13 budget and the 14 budget, that's all public and we know what that was. The budget that was put together for FY15, and we know what was budgeted. So what was the new information?
As I told you, there were presentations at the executive session by the union.
But we never had any union people in the executive sessions.
Never.
Now, Ms.
Where did we have the there
Ms.
was presentation. Was it?
There was a
Ms.
presentation.
Pyres
There was a
came.
presentation in the
executive session?
Ms. Pyres came and said that she thought that the position should be unfunded because there was going to be a budget shortfall. But did anyone ask me if there was going to be a budget shortfall? And the numbers that proposed that there would be a budget shortfall based on the contract were numbers that the business office, the FinCom, and the town put together, but that you, Dr. Urel, did a very large PowerPoint to discredit those numbers and accepted the union numbers, which said there wasn't going to be a shortfall. So do you believe that there will or won't be a shortfall?
Wasn't there a finance committee meeting where they said there was
Earl.
going to be a shortfall?
But
Yes.
those numbers were entirely rejected by Dr. Urel during his PowerPoint. All of the numbers put together by everyone except the STA were rejected as the basis for coming to that decision. So, do you or do you not believe that there will be a shortfall?
Yes or no?
There is,
No,
we don't do that.
Because
Yes or no?
honestly, I don't understand. This sounds to me like looking at, I don't hear any new information.
I personally believe
I
that there will
don't
be a shortfall.
understand.
I know, I understand, and I know what you've said, and I've listened to all of the other people that have talked about it, and I made my decision because of the Finance Committee saying that there is going to be a shortfall.
Now, based on the fact that I am the person who watches the budget and that we have now done almost all of our hiring for this school year, a lot of whether or not there would be a shortfall based on what the contract is, the money in the contract wasn't in the original budget. But we've had some attrition, so hiring people at less salaries than people who left. As a consequence of that, there may not actually be a shortfall.
Right.
But that's something that I can tell by looking at the hiring that we've done. On what basis do you believe that there will be a shortfall? And if you believe there'll be a shortfall, then,
His fears are true.
well, then what's the implication?
I think you are bringing the shortfall. I told you that based on my experience working with you and also seeing these numbers and the presentation we heard, I think it's irresponsible to fill these positions. So that's why I cast my vote in that direction.
But-
I mean,
but
why
do
do you
you?
try
But
to, the
honestly-
vote has been taken.
But I don't understand. Is the basis for the vote that you believe the positions cannot be afforded?
I never said that. I said it's fiscally irresponsible. So I like to return the money to the town. That's what it is.
But
We made a mistake when we approved the budget. Now I want to correct my mistake.
All right, first of all,
Simple as that.
it's been 16 minutes. Okay, secondly, we've already debated this issue. We should not be debating it now.
Oh, we didn't debate it in
We
public.
didn't debate it in public. It should have been in public.
Yes,
What
this
we'll do
this
is,
is a very valuable
I
position.
don't understand. I've heard different things that are confusing to me.
I'm
and
totally
so
confused.
I'm just
Can I tell
trying
you
to get
the
an
way I
explanation
voted?
of the new
Yeah, let's keep it up.
information that Dr. Urel
Don't help now.
claims was the reason for making a change. But now, and the reason this is something of a concern to me is I have been in one position or another working here for about 7.5 years. During that time, although it is in fact the case, and everyone knows it, that the town meeting votes a bottom line budget, but the school's lifeblood is based on the credibility that we have with the people who do that voting, that they believe what we tell them, and it has always been a point of pride of mine, and will continue to be, that when I say this is what we're going to do with the money, unless there's a very good reason and we have to discuss it in public and we have to explain why we might have changed or made a different decision, that every single dime will be spent the way we say it will be spent. And for me to be able to go to those folks who support us every year, sometimes for 4 and 5%, and that we are going to be asking for a major building project, that I can stand up in front of them and say, this is what we're going to do with the money if you vote it, and not take a cynical approach of, well, I'll just do whatever with it once we get it. I feel that I need to be able to say that if this is something that I can no longer say to you, Town of Stoughton, because there are people who take a different point of view, then it needs to be very clear to people that that this is not my particular choice to be doing this. But looking at why, I honestly don't understand. So I'm asking you to explain the genesis of this decision.
So what we'll do is, well, first of all, I take an exception to what you said. If you spend every dime of the money you get from the town meeting, why did you return $780,000 last year?
Let's not change the
Number
point
two
now.
question. No, it's the
Don't
goes
change
to
it.
the credibility. Number 2 point. If you spend every dime you get from the town meeting, then why do you keep doing transfers, from special education to lawyer bills, yada, yada, yada. So you just go, it's a school budget is a dynamic process, and we have a school committee that's on top of that process. That's the approving body. So you want to take it away from the school committee saying, oh, the budget was voted in December. Oh, the school committee wants to change it. That's unfair. The vote, people looked at it. There has been discussion. And if you like to repeat the discussion in open session, I have no objection to it. So I will schedule it for the next meeting. I'll put it on the agenda. Ms. Husseini made some allegations that it was done in the executive session.
It was.
We'll bring that was based on the attorney's recommendation. So we'll bring him, and he will explain why it was done that way. And then we'll all come to some kind of an agreement.
May I discuss the piece of paper that I handed out? It's in direct response to one point you made. I'll make it brief.
Okay.
I handed out a piece of paper because you said that these administrative positions and the escalation of costs was irresponsible or something to that effect. I went on the DESE website today and I pulled this information. It compares it. I chose the 11 towns in our DART process, plus a couple of neighboring towns. What I did is I have, and I'll make the table available. It is a percentage of per pupil expenses spent on administration and the percentage of per pupil expenses spent on classroom teachers and teaching specialists. We are, among our DART communities, the lowest percentage, 2.07, compared to the average of 3.01 on per pupil expenses on administration. When I got on this committee, as a matter of fact, the state had told us in one of the reports that we were 7 or 8 positions short in administration, and that we may do, and it has always been the focus of this committee to put our money in the classroom, but there comes a point where you need the support services to support those classroom teachers, and we are still behind the 8 ball. But in contrast to that, we spend 44.16% of our budget per pupil expenses on classroom teachers, which is 7.25% more than the average and well more than many of the towns. So I'm pleased that we're able to spend and that we make the commitment to spend on teaching, but we are doing it at the expense of administration and with complexities of the requirements being thrown at us. It is a disservice to everybody. It is a disservice to the students. It's a disservice to our current administration and to the teachers who need the support. And that is what I need to say.
Thank
and
you.
the numbers support that.
Dr. Erdem, can I just say one thing, please?
Please.
So I want to go back to Dr. Rizzi in reference to the money that the town allotted to us for this fiscal year, and that in fact we did say that we would spend it the way we said when the money was given to us. What was the turn to make us now not get these positions that money was allocated for? I just don't understand, so I'm just trying to figure it out, so help me out.
School committee lawyer will explain it. So, I'm not too up to speed with the law, but we had some kind of a demand from the union to negotiate, so that's how it evolved. But he will...
Teachers union or from the...
It turns out, I'm also confused on
I'm not
this.
sure,
The
so I'm
Unit A
asking.
and Unit B are the same union. Yeah, so they said, we want to negotiate. Unit B wanted to negotiate, and then Unit A said, we are the same union, they can't negotiate. So there is some kind of internal politics. So it's a delicate matter, so I'll have the lawyer here next meeting, and then he'll explain it to us.
Sounds good, thank you.
Katie, let me interrupt
I
you
won't talk.
at this point. So let's move on to acceptance. So the financial transfers, we are going to take it up at the next meeting. Item number 12 is the acceptance of minutes. So they were distributed to you in your packets. April 29, regular meeting. There was just, this was available to you before, but there was just one item in there was highlighted in the new packets as yellow. It's insertion of one sentence. Ms. Shea checked the video of the meeting and now inserting Dr. Urol mentioned that if anyone would like to say anything about the process or make a motion about repeating the process, he would entertain that discussion. So would that change, as they included in your packets, is there a motion to approve the minutes for April 29?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes
Is
for
there a
April
second?
29th.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Yes.
I object to that being added. I don't believe that it has any bearing on what the content of that motion was. And what I have is the attorney's opinion that was issued that said the votes of the 3 members did not comply with the school committee's own rules or Robert's Rules of Orders. I would therefore recommend that the reorganization process be initiated or ratified depending on the perspective of which member is asking at the April 29th scheduled meeting. Further, there is a legitimate legal and policy reasons to conduct the reorganization, again, to remove any doubt. You have the obligation to vote, not to ask the members whether they feel like voting. You are the chair, and there's a legal obligation. So if you want to leave that in, I ask that we either insert these minutes or this recommendation from the lawyer. And if you don't choose to do that,
Wait a minute, time out.
no, this is one that's been floating around forever.
Okay, so that one will be appended to
Or to today's minutes.
April 16 minutes.
Of April. Oh, well,
So we have a motion and second here. Is there all in favor? If there is no other discussion, all in favor?
aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed.
Got 2 opposed. All right. Next one is
They will be.
May 27. No, May 14 minutes. May 14 minutes. That was just a change from 140 to 160. And there was a challenge, and Ms. Shea checked her minutes. And in fact, the number is 160. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the May 14 minutes.
Motion to approve May 14 minutes.
I
For a
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Dr. Brown,
Excuse me?
you vote yes for May 14 minutes, or
I didn't read
against?
them, so I'm going to say no.
So we got 4 to 1. Okay, next one is
Special meeting, April 16th.
oh, April 16
Okay.
minutes. So that one, I just wanted to add. Oops, that one. 16, May 14. Oh, April 16th, it's up at the beginning. So what we need to do is just add, is it like we add, Ms. Shea, the documents considered? Or was it the documents viewed? We normally add to the minutes. List of documents, something like that?
Barbara?
Yeah, so we just want to add the opinion
Give
Ms.
her.
Husseini got,
Hit her.
and also the handout, like I had a handout about obsolete nature of the, what was it, town code, something like that. So I'll, if you don't have it, I will
Date.
send it to you, and Ms. Husseini will give you, if you need it.
I've already supplied.
Okay, good. So with that amended, is there a motion to approve as amended?
Motion to approve is amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Well, I was not there for part of the meeting, so I'm weighing how to, I guess since it's my information I supplied, I will vote aye.
Dr. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Brown was not present at the
I
meeting.
wasn't here, so I
Oh,
have to
you weren't
abstain.
here, okay.
This is the one that, this is,
4, and
excuse me,
then
time
one
out, time
abstention
out.
because
Help
Dr.
me out,
Brown
stop,
is
stop
not
going so
at the
fast,
meeting.
Dr. Erdem, wait a minute, time out. So I'm gonna have to abstain because I wasn't here, and this is the meeting that you all did the reorganization that I didn't have notification. Am I correct?
So that's what we
Help
said.
me out. Yes?
That's what I said.
Did you say yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we are done with the item 12. Item 13 is correspondence. Do we have any correspondence? No. We have no correspondence. Item 14, other matters.
I have one.
Ms. Husseini.
My other matters actually refers to a conversation that I would like to have publicly in regard to one of the items that's on the executive session. I'm not going to get into the content of it, but it is in fact on the redacted meeting minutes. And I guess my concern after reviewing them is that I take exception to the content that was redacted. I disagree with the standing that I was told that it would impact our future negotiating position. Much of what was redacted had already appeared in the press and was specific to the interim offers that were made during this past round of negotiations and had no bearing on future negotiating positions. I would like to put on an agenda, a further agenda, an actual side-by-side review of the minutes against the redacted versions so that we have a say in the content, because I believe a great deal of my feelings, which, like I said, had already been publicly stated, were reported in people's blogs, were reported on Facebook by others, were taken out, and I think it really diluted the meaning of where I stood on the position of the contract. So I know that we have it on the agenda for tonight, but I don't have the entirety of the non-redacted minutes in my possession, and I would like to do it side by side.
These are either approved or in your packet.
I understand that.
Just to give you also a little bit of background, when we had this humongous request for minutes, I didn't want the committee to spend much time on it. I mean, trying to figure out what to redact and what not to redact. So we just turned it over to the attorney, saying, you just look at it. Is it okay to send it? He said, oh, there are some material related to ongoing union negotiations because contract is settled now, but we'll start negotiating in 2 years from now. So
well,
there are some may I please
Certainly.
finish? So I said, okay, so why don't you come up with a recommendation to redact? And then we have, he went and worked on it, and Ms. Shea was worked like a superwoman, finished all these minutes. Then my intention was to put it in the executive session today, and that's why I asked Ms. Shea to provide a set of redacted minutes in the packet. So that was my intention. Okay. And then what happened, there was some, I guess, some communication with the attorney and with Dr. Rizzi, because attorney sent a cover letter to Ms. Anzavino saying that, these are the redacted minutes, yada, yada, yada. And he recommended, since the superintendent is the custodian of all school department records, he said it would be appropriate for the school superintendent to sign this letter.
I actually asked him if he would do so, since I had nothing to do with the minutes. I generally do not have anything to do with the minutes, as they are your minutes. I had nothing to do with the redacting process or the decisions involved in the redacting process, and so I believe any cover letter will be coming from him.
So superintendent told him what she said, saying that I would like you to write the cover letter. Yep. So he did, but so he sort of interpreted superintendent's message as go ahead and send them. So these are, even though we have it on our agenda to discuss, because that was my intention, to do side-by-side comparison and then let the committee decide what to redact, what not to redact.
Well, but the fact
So
that
that's
we're.
why they are all
okay.
gone, but we can still do it. We can unredact the stuff, but
Well,
we
here-
can't redact the stuff that has been released.
Here's what has been released for the purposes of whatever Mrs. Anzavino had asked for them, I'm sure will be in somebody else's hands, whether it's the Attorney General who may ask for the unredacted. That is not what I'm talking about here.
Right.
My concern is that on the executive session for tonight is the release of those executive session minutes in that redacted form. And I'm saying I think that, in fact, it was far too restrictive, especially in light of the fact that we never took the vote to ratify the contract in public. Again, the public who put us in office, who expects transparency and expects to understand why each and every one of us votes the way we do, so that they can determine whether they want to put us back in office or to continue to support us,
In April.
deserves to have the conversation in public. And by taking these minutes out, that basically our large block went into, reconvened into Dr. Brizzi's office for discussion, large block redacted, took a vote, does not at all say what my intentions were and why I voted on that contract. And nothing in that last vote that was struck that had my words in it was information that was pertinent to negotiations. It was all information that had already been said in public. So if we're going to be releasing the minutes, I ask that we not do that till we have the opportunity. And I can ask Mrs. Shea then for those, I'm missing maybe 3 or 4 of the minutes. I get my packets mostly electronic except for executive session minutes, and I have misplaced a stack of the executive session
I
minutes.
see. It happens
So-
to me too, so don't feel bad.
So I would
But
like
the,
to delay that.
The information has been released.
I understand that, and that's
what
separate
we'll
of the
do-
conversation that I'm having here.
What we'll do is, if you're asking to
It's been released.
unredact some more stuff,
Yes.
then we will, we can do that.
Being released to answer a specific need and being released as in terms of being released and available to the public, I think are 2 different things, and I would like to delay that.
Would you send me a specific agenda request for next meeting?
Will do.
Thank you. So is there any other matters? Seeing none, we will be going into executive session for the, this is a short one.
I just shortened your executive session, Dr. Brown.
No,
10 o'clock, I'm leaving.
it was actually, I mean, we weren't gonna do B anyways because
Okay.
the attorney already released them, so for us to vote on it would be redundant. We're just going into executive session for the purpose of acceptance of minutes for May 13, May 27, June 2nd, June 13, June 16, June 17, June 18, June 23, and June 24. So I'll be, financial warrants will be circulated. Our next meeting is September 23, 2 weeks from today. And I'll start roll call. Ms. Husseini,
Yes.
Mr. Soares,
Yes.
Ms. Enochian,
Yes.
Dr. Brown.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, so we won't be coming into open session.